Is it all clear? Did you go through your textbooks? Were you able to comprehend? Were you able to develop an idea about what is the essence of financial relationship between center and states? Were you able to develop some idea? Yes? Okay. So then tell me, what is Article 275? What is Article 275? What is your understanding of Article 275? Right. Grants in aid. Okay. So who provides these grants in aid? Who is competent to provide grants in aid? Center. That's right. Center. Yes. Parliament through an act. Is it the Parliament alone? No wonder it's called a statutory grant, because Parliament has a power to do that. In addition to that, apart from Parliament, is there any other authority also who is empowered, who is competent enough to provide grants and aid to the states? Finance Commission recommendation. Yeah. It's done by the President. See, either it is done by the Parliament or it is done by President. When President makes grants, he should not act on his discretion. It should be on the basis of recommendations of Finance Commission. So this is one of the function of Finance Commission as given under Article 280. So yeah, so I hope you're clear about it and we can push forward. So yesterday I had discussed something about Finance Commissions, right? Finance Commission, and I had given you an idea about Finance Commission. So I told you Finance Commission performs its functions as given under Article 280. Its first function, what is it? What is the first important function of Finance Commission? To recommend to the President about how to go about with horizontal and vertical devolution of taxes, right? This is what is given in Article 270. We have discussed about it. So, what do we mean by horizontal devolution of taxes? It is out of the total divisible pool of resources, how much money should be given to center, how much money should be given to states, right? So this is the essential question into which Finance Commission goes into and provides its solution. So we'll have to just have an idea about actually how a Finance Commission's recommendations look like. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll have a look at the 15th Finance Commission's recommendations. We'll not study the entire report of 15th Finance Commission, but what we'll do is we'll just try to understand the broad nature of the recommendations. So this is horizontal devolution, and out of the total money that is given to the states, how much should be given to each and every state? That is what is called, this is called as horizontal devolution, and this is of course called as vertical devolution of taxes, right? So we'll just try to find out. So if you have gone through your textbook, did you study the chapter about Finance Commission in your Lakshmikant? Did you go through the chapter on Finance Commission in your Lakshmikant? So Finance Commission, the composition of Finance Commission is provided in the Constitution. Is it a correct statement or is it a wrong statement? Composition of Finance Commission is provided in the Constitution of India. Is it a right statement or wrong statement? Wrong. Yes. It is a correct statement. Yesterday I had told you composition is provided in the Constitution. Article 280 says there will be one chairman and 4 other members. But their qualifications are not given in the Constitution. It will be decided by Parliament by a separate law. Parliament has made the Finance Commission Act 1950, which talks about the different qualifications of chairperson and other members as well. So, if you have gone through your textbook, you would have even come across the eligibility to become the chairperson and eligibility to become the other members. That is all given in your Lakshmikant. Basically, the eligibility to become a chairperson is you have to be an expert. You have to have had experience in public affairs. Okay, you should have a long-standing experience in public affairs. So what does it mean? It's an IAS officer, usually, who becomes a chairperson of Finance Commission because of wide experience in different sectors of government. Otherwise, at times you even find politicians, ministers also becoming chairpersons of Finance Commission, right? So similarly, 15th Finance Commission also had Mr. N.K. Singh as the chairperson of the 15th Finance Commission. He is a retired IAS officer. So he was the chairperson and it had 4 other members also. Okay. So what was the recommendation of Finance Commission? Okay, before that, let me tell you something. When this 15th Finance Commission was constituted, and is it mandatory for the president to constitute a Finance Commission every 5 years once? Is it mandatory? Is it mandatory as per the Constitution? Yes or no? Yes. That's why we have a Finance Commission which will be constituted by Finance President every 5 years once. So this Finance Commission was constituted in 2019, I believe, so as to recommend for how much money should be, what should be the sharing ratio, to provide a formula about how resources has to be shared between center and states and between states. The Finance Commission was constituted in 2019 by the President. When the Finance Commission was constituted, the President gave what is called as terms of reference. Do you know what is this terms of reference? Do you know what does it mean? Anybody? Any idea? What do you understand by this word terms of reference? Very good, very good. Objectives to pursue. And a wonderful answer. So, not just Finance Commission, any commission, if it is constituted, let's say a commission was constituted so as to investigate into the mysterious circumstances of death of former Chief Minister Jayalalitha. Okay, there was a commission constituted. Any commission, if it is constituted, it should have a purpose, right? It should have objectives. Why is the commission even constituted? That is what is called as terms of reference. The authority, let it be the president or let it be the governor at the state level, whoever constitutes a commission will have to provide the commission with certain set of objectives. This is what you're supposed to expect it to come out with. These are the findings. These are the areas into which you'll have to make a study and give us a report. That is what is called as terms of reference. Okay. When the president gave the terms of reference to 15th Finance Commission, there was a lot of protest from the southern states. The southern states were very angry at the terms of reference. Anybody? Do you know what was the reason? Okay, 15th Finance Commission was constituted November 2017. All right, let it be 17 or 18 or 19, no problem. But that 5-year time, see, 14th Finance Commission gave a formula for the financial year 2015 to 2020. For this 5 financial years, how much money should be shared between center and states, how much money should be shared between the states. For this 5-year, the formula given by 14th Finance Commission, maybe this would have been constituted before this period, 2012 or 13, it could have been constituted. It would have taken 1 or 2 years for its study, and they would have submitted their report by 2014, so that the formula will be implemented by 15 to 20. So 15th Finance Commission's recommendations are to take effect from 2020 to 2025. It is for these 5-year time period, a Finance Commission has to be constituted. So yeah, you may be right. It may have been constituted in 2017 also. That's correct. Only then they will have the necessary time to study and submit its report. So yeah, 2017 maybe. Okay. So very good. The answer is right. It's because of population census. That's correct. I'll tell you what it means. When a terms of reference was given to the 15th Finance Commission, there was a lot of protest from the southern states. They were angry at the terms of reference. Why? because President gave a terms of reference. He said that switch over, I mean, give me recommendations on how to share revenues on the basis of population estimates as per 2011 census. Okay, it was constituted with a mandate of recommending to the president about the formula, sharing formula, but on the basis of population estimates as per 2011 census. So what does it actually mean? See, 15th Finance Commission's recommendation for vertical devolution. Vertical devolution is between center and states. What was its recommendation? Its recommendation was give 41% to the states, 59% to be in the hands of center. Out of the total divisible pool of resources, let 59% be in the hand of center, let 41% be given to the states. Okay. So now there is no conflict here, even though there were some concerns here also, because when you look at the 14th Finance Commission's recommendations, the sharing ratio between center and states was 58% and 42%. So states had 42% of revenue allocation, whereas as per 15th Finance Commission, this is for the time period, now it is revised and from 2021 to 2026. This is the time period of 15th Finance Commission's ambit. So for this 5 years, states are going to get reduced 1% reduction has been seen, whereas 14th Finance Commission's recommendations, it said 42% should be given to the states. Screen on. Screen. So do you think, do you know what is the reason for this 1% reduction from 14 to 15th Finance Commission minus 1% reduction to the states? Do you know why it happened? Yeah, of course. That's correct. So Jammu Kashmir was earlier a state. Now J&K is not a state. It is a part of union territories. So it is under the control of center. So center has more responsibility to spend money. That is why a 1% reduction. So there was not much of concern. When it comes to vertical devolution, there is no concern. It just followed whatever principle was given by the previous Finance Commission. So no hue and cry, nothing. It was very rational. Now the issue is, how should this 41% be divided? Okay. To divide this 41% between different states, do you think Uttar Pradesh and Arunachal Pradesh must be given the same amount of money? Do you think so? It is basically this revenue sharing happens so as to take care of the needs of the states, because the bulk of the taxation powers in the constitution is in the hands of the union government, not the state government. You would have seen yesterday, list 1, you go through the taxation powers. Too much of powers is concentrated in the hands of union to tax people, not extensive taxation powers in the hands of state government. So states are always dependent on the center. When states get money from the center, do you think UP and Arunachal Pradesh must be getting equal amount of money? No, because UP, it's a very commonsensical question only. Because UP has a larger population, UP has more amount of people to feed, more amount of population to develop new offices, develop new roadways. So that is why UP's needs are higher. So definitely you can accept that some of the criteria that decides why UP should be given more amount of money, among the criteria, a very essential criteria will definitely be population. Correct? Population will be a factor in deciding how much money should be given to different states. Okay. What else? What else do you think can be a reason? Let's say there are 2 states. We have Tamil Nadu and we have, let's say, Bihar. Tamil Nadu and Bihar, both are having equal population. So does it mean that both the states should be given equal amount of money? Or should there be something else also which should be a determinant? What would be your answer? In addition to population as a criteria, can there be some additional criteria also in deciding on finance transfers, resource transfers? What would be your answer? Tax paying, sir. Okay, tax paying. I accept the point. All right, I'll come to that. Development needs. Sir, we have discussed this in detail in economics. Oh, all right. So your 15th Finance Commission is already discussed in detail. Okay. Already it is discussed. Okay. Okay, fine then. So, okay. So I don't know. Then I'll just write it down. Income distance. So I don't have to explain this then. Income distance is one criteria. And other commonsensical criteria would be, oh, even comparison is also done between 14th and 15th Finance Commission. The comparison is also over. All right. So you don't want me to discuss, right? Can we then move ahead then? Okay. All right. So fine. Then I'll just skip this discussion. So what I actually essentially want to point out here is the significance of Finance Commission. So out of the recommendations of 15th Finance Commission, can then tell me what is the significance? How do you appreciate the role of Finance Commission? Tell me. Can you list out some significance of Finance Commission in terms of center-state relations? What would be your concluding remarks about the significance of Finance Commission? Establishment of cooperative federalism. How do you say cooperative federalism is established because of Finance Commission? Give me reasons. Okay, reasons are more important. Cooperative federalism. How? Yeah, encouraging decentralization by providing financial autonomy. That's a very good point. It provides the necessary fiscal space for autonomous functions of the state governments. It provides the necessary independence. States are not begging before the center. States are now entitled because of the recommendations. That's fine. And what else? So when you said cooperative federalism, can you tell me, can you give me, the point is right, but I want to know how. Why do you say cooperative federalism? What if I say 15th Finance Commission has recognized the principle of competitive federalism? If I were to say this, will you accept to that or will you not accept to that statement? Clear demarcation of sharing criteria. So you can say that the revenue distribution, both horizontal and vertical, becomes objective and not as per the discretion. It eliminates bias, eliminates partisan bias. Okay, this can be another significance of Finance Commission. Encouraging states to take necessary actions to improve the demographic factors like literacy, health, population control, forest cover. Okay. Because amounts are properly shared between center and state. That is all here. Yeah, the point on Sri Lakshmi's point is actually correct. It is about encouraging states to take necessary actions to improve demographic factors. Because demographic performance is also one of the criteria which has been introduced in the 15th Finance Commission. So definitely I can accept to that. I can say that it promotes competition between the states. How? Because of introducing indicators like demographic performance, including indicators such as tax efforts, tax and fiscal efforts. This is also one of the indicators that has been criteria that has been brought in, right? Do you understand this part? How this can lead to increased competition between the states? Are you able to understand the significance of tax efforts as a criteria? Hmm? Do you understand the meaning of this word tax efforts, tax and fiscal efforts? What does it even mean? I'm saying this is actually promoting this one criteria, just like population, income, distance, tax efforts has a 2.5 percentage weightage. So how does this promote competitive federalism in India? They will try to increase the tax revenue. All right. So these are some of the significance that you can find out of Finance Commission. Well, but I think somebody in this batch only asked me yesterday to discuss about Finance Commission. Did you not? Yesterday, last question, something was like that, or was it in some other batch? Was it in this batch or some other batch? Oh, okay. So you guys are already aware of it, so no need to spend time here. Then we'll just move on to Planning Commission. So Planning Commission is also taken. If you say yes, my work will become even more simpler. So Planning Commission, what about it? Was it discussed? I think that should also have been discussed in your economic classes. Yeah, it should have been. The different planning process and all. Yes, okay. In general economics. All right, all right. So I hope then you already have an idea about the problems of planning process. Why Planning Commission became an irritant in center-state relations. Do you know that also? Oh, you know that also. Yes. Centralized approach. Okay. One size fit all approach. Well, no. Not really one size fit all approach. What about others? We have 20 aspirants here, so I can skip discussion of Planning Commission if all of you are in agreement that it has been already discussed. We know about the issues with Planning Commission also, sir. If you say so, I can just skip it and I can move on. What is your answer? Planning Commission done. Okay. Okay, we can discuss superficially, like asking questions. So tell me why Narendra Modi was opposing Planning Commission. Tell me why. Why was Narendra Modi opposing Planning Commission? That is why when he took charge, the first thing that he did was he disbanded Planning Commission, right? And he brought in a new institution called as Niti Ayog. Why? Why was he so angry at Planning Commission? Why do you think so? It was more centralized. Come on, you cannot say it's more. This kind of a criticisms are general points. Okay, you can give it as your fourth point or a fifth point in the answer. The first point should be the best point. So you should tell me the best of the point. Centralized. It's authoritarian. Concentration of powers. All these are general vague points. Okay. Fourth point, half marks. But 1.5 marks, best points should be brought first. He wanted to decentralize planning process and introduce Niti Ayog, which has state representatives. I'm sorry, even Planning Commission had a good state representation in the form of National Development Council, NDC. Okay, even there also you did have state representation. It's not that states were not represented. Planning Commission was not favoring Gujarat as it was relatively well developed. Okay, but But don't you think then you can accuse the same on Finance Commission also? Because in Finance Commission, one of the indicators is what is called as income distance. Income distance refers to the level of backwardness in the state. More backward the state is, more is the income distance, so more weightage you will get in Finance Commission recommendations. So if development was the grounds on which, if at all, discrimination could have been done by Planning Commission, the same kind of an accusation can be leveled against Finance Commission also. So that was not the reason. No. Planning Commission approves the budget for the plans. Okay. So what is the problem in budget? There is no problem in budget. In the way budgeting is done, Planning Commission does not approve the budget. No. Planning Commission did not share ideas between states. Well, we have a different context today, but in 1950, when the concept of Planning Commission was introduced, there was no need to share any ideas between the states. They had power to allocate various resources for implementing projects. That's the correct answer. Planning Commission did not promote competition and learning between the states. No. Not all these things. The correct answer is said by 204. Okay. They had the power to allocate various resources for implementing the plans. Basically, let's say if a refinery has to be set up, okay, let's say a refinery has to be set up. Where do you think a refinery has to be set up in India here? In this entire stretch of India, where do you, can I set up in the interior of a forest in Odisha? Is it okay to set up a refinery here? It's not so, not the case. It should be somewhere in the coast, right? And a high-tech industry like Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, where do you think it should be set up? Is it okay to set up this industry in the most backward district of Odisha, a district called as Koraput in Odisha, the most backward district? Is it okay to set up this industry, high-tech industry here? Give me the answer for this Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. You're saying no, where there is enough infra, right? But today in Odisha, in Koraput district, you have Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, where the parts for Sukhoi 30 fighter aircraft are manufactured. Okay, ideally speaking, it should have been located somewhere in Bangalore or in Chennai or in Mumbai, somewhere where there are IITs around, where there are ancillary industries around. But it was set up in an interior jungle where there is not even rail connectivity in such a district. This was set up. The reason is, what could have been the reason? Tell me. What was the reason? This is the problem with Planning Commission, because India, since the 1950s, after independence, we took the kind of approach we had was what was called as the command approach. Just because you have money, 1,000, 2,000 crore money, it doesn't mean that you can set up industry wherever you like. You will have to be approved by the government to set up an industry. That was the industrial policy of the then period. So the industrial policy of the then period, it wanted industries to be set up not to generate profits. No. Even if you're a capitalist, as a capitalist, my intention to set up an industry will be only to earn more money, to generate more profits. But in the Planning Commission era, the location of industry was decided not just to generate profits, but it is to remove the backwardness of that area. So this is the command approach which was followed in the days of Planning Commission. So because of which, so see, there are always two sides of the coin. The then policymakers had a reason behind that. They thought that if industries are set up because industries, if it's left to market forces, will never come up in these areas. Industries will only come up in these parts of India. So that is why they wanted to promote all-round development, even balanced development of all parts of India. by ensuring that industries are also set up here. This was a kind of an approach that was being followed. So any industries, if somebody wants to set up, it will be set up in these kind of areas. But unfortunately, it so happened that these kind of decisions of planning commission were given a political color. You wanted to set up an industry in Odisha not because of backwardness, because that is also ruled by Congress party, center is also Congress party. That is why you wanted to set up an industry in Odisha. But actually, the industry should have been set up in probably in Maharashtra. This kind of a political color starts getting painted on the institution of planning commission, because that's the curse of the body. Planning commission as an institution, it had to take on these kind of allegations against it. It has no other option, because you cannot satisfy everybody for a long period of time. There will definitely be fingers pointed out to you. People make an issue out of this, right? So this is one such reason. That is why Gujarat, and moreover, when we go for planning, maybe our plan for the period 1990 to 2000, okay, or 1990 to 1995, this 5-year planning commission as a body of experts, economists, so they decide that in this 5-year period, we should make India as an automobile hub of the world, okay, or automobile hub of at least Asia. So what do? They want to set up, they want to make India as a good destination for industries, for automobile manufacturers to come and set up. So they think about it and they find that these are the areas which are closer to seas, easy to export from this part of India. It is easy to export to all the Southeast Asian markets, also to African markets, also to Latin American markets. So what happens is, huge amount of money is spent to develop Sri Perumbudur and this entire area as an automobile hub. If this happens, definitely there will be a cry from other states, right? You are favoring Tamil Nadu because it is ruled by the same political party as the party, or the coalition partners are there. That is why, so it was this kind of issue since, and I told you the era of conflict from 1965 to 1990. Naturally, when politics takes its ground in various states where regional parties come to power, they are all opposition parties to the Congress party in the center. So naturally, during this period of time, there was a complete opposition to planning commission. Planning commission was criticized throughout this period, and finally, when Modi became the prime minister, he had to completely disband this institution of planning. Okay, because the most distinguishing feature of finance commission when you compare with planning commission is there is an objective criteria that is followed in terms of finance commission's recommendations: income, distance, population, area. So there is more objectivity in finance commission's way of transferring resources than in planning commission's way of transferring resources. It becomes easier to criticize planning commission compared to finance commission, right? But so how would you? So 2014 Modi came. He was always against planning commission, so he just disbanded it, right? Now we have an institution called as Niti Aayog. So can you now tell me what is the function of Niti Aayog? So is Niti Aayog also doing these kind of resource allocations? Is Niti Aayog doing resource allocation like how planning commission was doing earlier? No. Okay. Why no? So what is Niti Aayog doing then? Then why was this body even created? See, it is only an advisory body. Even planning commission is also an advisory body. Planning commission itself will not allocate resources. Planning commission is an expert body of. Planning commission is not a body of politicians. It's the politicians who have the final call in deciding how resources should be allocated. Planning commission gives its advice, and based on that advice, money will be allotted to different parts of India for different purposes. That was how things were done earlier. Even planning commission was not directly taking money and giving it to the states. That was not what planning commission was doing. So how would you essentially differentiate between Niti Aayog and planning commission? Okay, now states can plan their needs, and Niti Aayog sees to it and advises further, and it allocates fund. It does not allocate fund. That is my issue here. Niti Aayog does not have any role in fund allocation. It's a consultative body. But To understand and appreciate the functions of Niti Aayog, you should understand the changed environment. Planning Commission was set up in 1950. Niti Aayog was set up in 2014. That is post LPG era. 1950, only state was the sole supplier. Of goods and services. The state has to create infrastructure. Every burden was on the shoulders of the state, and the resources availability was also very, very less. So it has to be planned in the best possible manner with the help of experts, and that is where Planning Commission originated. That is the era in which Planning Commission came up. But here, so even if it is education, even it is healthcare, only government has to pump in money and create government hospitals. But that is not the case since LPG era, where all sectors have been greatly liberalized. Now, if you see at this point of time, maybe public sector investments would have been 95%. Only 5% of income in investments in all different sectors could have been from private sector, which is not the case today. Now, private sector investment is much, much higher than public sector investments. If that is the case, it means that there is no need to actually plan. Okay, planning can take a back seat. You don't have to plan for allocation of resources because private sector has taken over a lot of sectors and government has virtually even withdrawn itself from various sectors. So if private forces are there, private players are there, it means that market forces of demand and supply itself will decide where resources have to be allocated. You don't have to think about anything else. Demand, supply, if it's there, automatically goods and services, everything will be provided by the private sector. So now the focus is on private. When private sector wants to invest, in tourism, they want to create resorts in Lakshadweep. If they create resorts in Lakshadweep, a lot of tourists will come, because of which the local economy will flourish. Earlier, it was the government which had to do all these work. But now private sector is keen on investing. But they have a lot of problems. What are the problems? The problems of land acquisition. Because the laws in state governments are very, very restrictive. They're not very progressive. Maybe private sector wants to invest in corporate farming, but corporate farming is illegal in many states, right? So there have to be changes that have to be brought in a lot of laws in the state levels. Maybe different kinds of approach has to be done. Maybe a private public partnership must be now nurtured, which was not the situation in which Planning Commission was working in. Only state, private sector was an enemy. That was the kind of an approach. Private sector should be curtailed as much as possible. But here, the importance of private sector is recognized. And so private sector has to be nurtured. Whatever problems private sector faces, it has to be sorted out. So sorting out this problem faced by the private sector is the function of Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog does not look into how efficiently resources have to be allocated. Okay, that is no longer the priority. Resource allocation is done by Finance Commission itself, and discretionary grants have reduced these days because everything has become statutory grants, or it has become or it has been taken care by Finance Commission. So the function of Niti Aayog is no longer to advise the government on how to allocate resources. That is not the work of Niti Aayog. Niti Aayog is there to serve the interest of private sector. Wherever there are bottlenecks faced by them, Niti Aayog resolves it. Niti Aayog, as you know, it's a think tank. It organizes a lot of webinars, seminars, inviting Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, and all such eminent persons. It's more like it's more like a corporate organization. Okay, so as you can say, the environment has changed, so has the functioning of the body also. So this is the essential difference between Niti Aayog and Planning Commission. Okay, so let's look into the conflicts. So Finance Commission, Planning Commission, and today we have Niti Aayog. Yeah, of course, Niti Aayog promotes cooperative federalism, competitive federalism through its aspirational districts program by having wonderful flow charts, pie charts. It tries to monitor real time about the progress done by each and every state in various sectors, and it pits one state against the other, drives competition between them. All those things, yeah, Niti Aayog has been doing, no doubt about that. So let's look into the conflicts and irritants issues. As you all know, one of the most important conflict. Okay, so before even going into this conflict, there is something else also to be discussed, which is Article 262 and 263. Okay, these are some dispute resolution mechanisms which are given in the Constitution for resolving disputes between center states or a state and a state. If there are any disputes, how it can be resolved. Constitution makers were aware of the potential of disputes to arise between the states because the states have to share a lot of common resources between them, rivers, forests, so mineral resources. So there will definitely be a conflict over who owns ownership over these resources, right? So that is why Constitution has provided for two different approaches. This is the mechanism given under Article 262 is a judicial approach. Under Article 263, it is more of a consensual approach, a consensus-based approach. Okay, so we have two different approaches given. Article 262 is very specific. It deals with river water disputes. Here, it's any disputes. So, what is Article 262? Article 262 provides for the Parliament if there are river water disputes, if this is the subject matter, how do you resolve them? Resolved by Parliament. Parliament by law, it can create tribunals. Okay, these tribunals will be created for the purpose of adjudicating river water disputes. Okay, so it is because of this Parliament has created a law which is called as Interstate River Water Disputes Act. I think 1956. I'm not sure about the year. Interstate River Water Disputes Act has been created. If you read the provisions, you will come across what will be the composition of tribunals and what should be the nature of functions of tribunals. All these things will be given. So, if Tamil Nadu and Karnataka have a problem with Kaveri river water sharing, they can go to a Kaveri water tribunal. I mean, Parliament will set up by law. Kaveri water tribunal will be set up, and the two states, whichever states are riparian, they can all go to the tribunal and they can get their issue sorted out. So the approach that is followed here is a judicial approach. That is, when I say judicial approach, it means it is an approach based on rights and ownership. Okay. So there are some well-settled principles on river water sharing. The principles of lower riparian state, to what extent they are entitled to receive water, if it is a lean season, if it is a high season. So based on certain principles, based on certain established judicial practices, based on historical data, how much has Tamil Nadu been consuming out of Kaveri river water, based on all these parameters, a verdict, an order will be given. How much is Tamil Nadu entitled to of Kaveri's flow on an annual basis? Okay, but the problem with this approach is it may end up in a judicial battle. There is always an aggrieved party. There is always somebody who will be aggrieved at the end of the day. You cannot satisfy all the parties at the same time, right? So that is why Kaveri Water Tribunal, as soon as it gave its award, it was again challenged by Tamil Nadu in Supreme Court. Under what jurisdiction? Do you know under what jurisdiction this issue was actually taken to Supreme Court? It is not original jurisdiction, no. Because when you read Article 262, I'll just show you what is given in Article 262. Look at this. Notwithstanding anything in the Constitution, Parliament may by law provide that neither the Supreme Court nor any other court shall exercise jurisdiction in respect of any such dispute or complaint as is referred to in Clause 1. Okay. That is, Parliament may by law provide for the adjudication of any dispute with respect to the use, distribution, or control of waters or in any interstate river or valley. So when it comes to interstate river water disputes, Supreme Court or any other court will not have any jurisdiction. Let's be very clear about that. When it comes to river water sharing, okay, in those matters, the Constitution itself provides in 262 that Supreme Court or High Court will not have any kind of jurisdiction. It will not come under the federal jurisdiction. No, it will not come under the original jurisdiction because the Constitution bars interference of Supreme Court or any other court in these kind of matters relating to river water disputes. If you read this Parliament by law, may by law, when you read Interstates River Water Disputes Act, what would have been given in that act is there will not be any appeal from the award of the tribunal to the Supreme Court. That is what you will find in Interstate River Water Disputes Act. That is, no appeal is possible from the verdict of tribunal, Kaveri Water Tribunal to Supreme Court. If that is the case, then tell me what kind of jurisdiction can actually be invoked in Supreme Court so as to entertain the plea of Tamil Nadu government. Yeah, other jurisdictions, appellate jurisdiction is barred. It will not come under original jurisdiction at all. Okay, original jurisdiction is barred, appellate jurisdiction is barred. Actually, it was done through special leave petition. SLP. SLP was filed by Tamil Nadu and it is based on that special leave to appeal petition. Based on that, Supreme Court had entertained Kaveri Water Tribunal award because the Supreme Court was satisfied that it was an unjust order given to Tamil Nadu. So Supreme Court had to take up that issue. Okay, so what you have to know is appellate jurisdiction is barred as per this law. Original jurisdiction is barred as per this clause of the clause 262, article 262 and clause 2, it is barred. Okay, so other jurisdictions can be invoked. It is through a special leave petition. The plea of Tamil Nadu government was heard by Supreme Court. So you have to just make note of this alone here. Okay. So this is one approach given in the Constitution to sort out river water disputes. Okay. But in addition to this, Constitution makers were also aware of the problems of this approach under Article 262. They know that it is a time-consuming process, 10 years, 15 years. Kaveri Water Tribunal had to take more than 10 years to give its award. So if this is the kind of problems that will be faced, so what can be the other way around? That is why Constitution makers also kept an alternative approach under Article 263. Okay, under Article 263, an alternative approach was made in the Constitution. It is for the purpose of creating bodies called as interstate councils. So if you have any problems between center states, don't go to the court. Come, let's sit in interstate councils. All of us, let's sit together. We will talk about our problems and we will find an amicable solution amongst ourselves. Why unnecessarily go to a court and prolong the issue? This is more of an easier approach. Let's sit together, talk and get our issues sorted out. Informal, negotiation-based approach, a give and take kind of an approach was also kept in the Constitution under Article 263. Okay. So this is for any other disputes between center or between the states. So what you have to remember between 262 and 263 is 262, who is the competent authority to set up an adjudication mechanism? It is the Parliament. Parliament by law will create a body to adjudicate river water disputes. But here it is the President will constitute an interstate council to resolve disputes between center and states or between states, whatever might be the issues. To sort it out, President will have to constitute an interstate council. This is an alternative kind of an approach that is given. Maybe instead of going to a court, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, Pondicherry, all of them can all come together. They can sit together and they can decide, okay, in upcoming 2 years, Tamil Nadu government will promise that I will convince my farmers in rice belt. I'll tell them not to grow rice because rice is water intensive. I'll ask them to shift to less water intensive crops. But the next 2 years, Karnataka will have to convince its own farmers to not grow rice, shift to ragi or less rice intensive crops. That way, we can share the burden and we can solve the issue amongst ourselves. Okay, but as you know, this approach is a very informal approach. There is nothing binding, there is no judicial verdict or anything. So there is no, the orders, the decisions taken in interstate councils can be just violated. Maybe the next government will come to power in Tamil Nadu and they will not even care about the decisions taken by the previous government. So the decision taken in interstate councils are not binding at all. Whereas when it comes to Article 262, it is a binding nature of the judgment given by the river water tribunals. So these are the differences between both mechanisms, one given in 262, the other given in 263. Who constitutes? 262 is Parliament, 263 is the President. And what is the nature of the approach? Judicial, rights-based approach. Here it's more of a consensus-based approach, negotiation-based approach. Binding nature in 262, non-binding in the case of interstate councils under Article 263. All right. So this is what is given in the Constitution. So that's what, whatever I have discussed, this is what is given here. And to know about, President has constituted interstate councils at many times. And for the first time, interstate councils were constituted in 1990. That was the first time an interstate council was ever constituted. Even though there were a lot of problems, the era of conflict, 1965 till 1990, there was the entire era of conflict. During that time, the states were crying, please set up interstate councils. We have a lot of disputes between ourselves. We have to get it resolved. Even between center and states also, we have a lot of disputes. So create interstate councils. But Indira Gandhi did not budge. No interstate councils was created. But for the first time, interstate councils was created in 1990 by the president. And after that, in many other occasions also, the next presidents have constituted various interstate councils. You will be finding all those data in your Lakshmikant. Okay, for what all purposes, at what times interstate councils have been created. You don't have to actually, I don't remember any question being asked from those areas. You have to just know about what is there in the Constitution about interstate councils. Because the composition of interstate councils will also vary from one body to the other. It's not a fixed composition of all interstate councils. So you don't have to remember them, but you just remember the three different points that I have just told you between 262 and 263. Article 262 statutory, 260 is executive order. That's correct. Yes. So now let's look into the various issues and disputes between center and states. So this is specifically in the context of 1965 to 1990. So from whatever we have discussed till now, can you think of what all possible conflicts could have arisen between center and states? Can you just make a broad guess? You don't have to go and memorize any of these recommendations or of different bodies. I'll tell you easy method to remember them. But first, let's start guessing about what all possible potential conflicts could have arisen between center and states during this period. Verdict of the tribunals are binding. Yes, that's correct. So any guesses about what all issues could have been there between center and states? Okay. Revenue distribution, executive power distribution. No. Revenue distribution is definitely an irritant. I accept that. Okay. This is a problem even till today. I'll tell you what is the contemporary nature of dispute between center and states when it comes to revenue distribution. What else? Yes, emergency, misuse of emergency provisions, definitely. 356 especially, yeah. Okay. Or you can even broadly categorize about emergency provisions itself was a source of conflict. And what else? Center involving in state matters. Well, they don't. No, they don't do that. So, in what do you have in mind when you say center involves in state matters? What do you actually have in your mind? Apart from that, a very prominent issue of irritant between center and states, another important issue is the governor. I'll tell you where the governor can play a partisan role. So many areas. One is, you know about the adverse report that the governor can give under Article 356. Under Article 356, the president will impose president rule on the basis of a report given by the governor. Yes? Did I mention that? Governor will give a report that this administration is not being run properly. So please impose president's rule. So governors used to play a mischievous role here. Even in the case of S.R. Bommai judgment, yes, S.R. Bommai case, were you able to appreciate the role of governor? Yes. Governor could have actually asked S.R. Bommai to prove his strength in the house. But without giving an opportunity, he just recommended to the president to impose president's rule. That is a clear case of partisan role played by the governors. And in addition to that, the governor can also play a role of an obstructionist. Can you think of how a governor can be an obstructionist to the administration, state administration? Yes, that's very correct. Governors reserving bills. So I had not taken state legislatures for you, but I don't know whether I'll take it also. Maybe with time, if we have time, I'll just try to bring out some important differences between union and state legislature. But governors have this power in their hands. If a bill is passed in state legislature and it is sent to the governor for his assent, the governor can reserve the bill for presidential consideration, right? Randomly, governors will reserve some important bills. Only if that bill is passed, the government can even take money from consolidated fund of the state to spend for its activities. But governor will just keep sitting on the bill because it is an opposition party. Maybe elections are around the corner. If they don't have money to spend, they will not be able to win elections. So governors used to play all these kind of roles. Separate country demand by some states. Well, no. Maybe some fringe elements or some minor parties in the states may have been raising such demands, but broadly, separatist demands from the elected chief ministers of the states were never the case. Even DMK had mellowed down its stand as soon as it started contesting in its elections. When you contest in your elections, you have to subscribe to an oath, the oath of, even to register your party as a DMK, if you read Election Commission's Representation of Peoples Act 29A, Section 29A, it says that you have to subscribe to national integrity, democracy. You have to subscribe to the constitution. Only then you can even register yourself as a political party. So the minute DMK entered into the domain of electoral politics, it had to give away its separatist demands. So I don't think separatist demands were an issue, an irritant in center-state relations. No. Another important dispute between center and states is with respect to all India services. This was a very, very severe problem, not today. Today, we don't have a problem with this group of people. But in the early days, a lot of problem. That is why, why did this problem happen? All India services, they are the ones who really run the government, not the politicians, right? They are permanent executives. They are just sitting there forever. Politicians will come, politicians will go. So, you imagine a culture for the first, from 1952 till 1965, for this so much of period, you had only one party, Indian National Congress at the center, and also in the states also you have Indian National Congress. So the bureaucracy that had developed a strong tilt towards Indian National Congress. And even if DMK comes to power here in 1966, maybe if it comes to power, it is very tough to get work done from this group of people because All India Service, the disciplinary control is not there with the state government. It is there only with the central government. They cannot be removed, they cannot be dismissed, nothing can be done to them except by central government. So these people were easily controlled by the central government and not by the state government. If DMK government wants to come up with a very nice policy, if it wants to improve the healthcare and education in Tamil Nadu, it has to, the ministers themselves cannot decide what should be done. They have to depend on this group of people. And they are sitting at the highest levels, so they will be able to dictate to the lower levels of bureaucracy, don't implement the schemes properly. Okay, because they know that if the schemes are not implemented, then probably DMK will be defeated in the next elections. And they were expecting Congress rule to last for a long time. And moreover, their obedience was towards the central government and not towards the state governments, because they have a lot to gain by being allegiant to the center and not to the states. Because their disciplinary control is more with the center, going on central deputations decided by the center, going on foreign study tours in universities decided by the center. Basically, states have no control over them except to transfer them from one place to the other. So, with the hope that again it will be the Congress rule at one point of time, they were also not obeying the regional governments which are formed in opposition rule states like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, West Bengal, Punjab, and even till today, these are the same cadres which are not really that good for all India services. Tamil Nadu is a cadre which is so hated for IAS. And in the sense, North Indians, only Tamilians will give Tamil Nadu as the first preference. Probably Keralites will give Tamil Nadu as their second preference. Apart from that, even Karnataka people, Kannadigas or Telugus, they themselves will not give Tamil Nadu as the second preference. Their preference will be the last for Kerala and last before for Tamil Nadu. Okay, that is how the perception is towards these states when it comes to all India services. Because why? Because the DMK governments, communist governments in West Bengal, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, they have had a very bitter experience with all India services. So what they have decided is, okay, these people, let them be in very insignificant post. Let us not make them collectors. It is only if they are made as collectors, they will be a problem, headache for us. We will not make them collectors. Only promotee officers from Group 1 services, they will be made as collectors. So all India services, so why I'm saying this is, but today, right now, the trends have all changed. Nowadays, this group of people, they are more obedient to the states than with the center, because of so many reasons. We'll not discuss about all those things, but today this problem is actually sorted out. It was in the era of conflict. In this era, this was a big headache. That is why there was a constant demand, especially from Tamil Nadu, when we discuss about the various state appointed committees which went into center state relations, like Rajamanar committee. You will come to understand that the very first body created by a state government to explore center state relations was Rajamanar committee, set up by Tamil Nadu, I think in 1969 maybe. Okay, when DMK government came to power, it set up that committee, and its important recommendation was abolish all India services. We don't want IAS or IPS, nobody. We are happy with our Tamil Nadu state service officials. Completely abolish all India service. That was the demand. So that was the kind of enmity that the regional governments had towards all India services, because they were a complete irritant. They were a problem for democratically elected governments at the state levels. Okay, nowhere in the world we have this kind of a concept where we have a federal setup, but still we will have, if it's a federal setup, employees at the state level should be the employees of the state government. They should not be appointed by the center and sitting in the states, right? Nowhere in the world we have such a kind of setup except for in India. That is why DMK was so keen and interested in abolishing all India services permanently. Okay, that is reflected in its Rajamanar committee report also. So this is definitely one of the irritant in center-state relations. What else? Election Commission, EC, okay. Central control on state list. Center control on state list. So what do you mean by that? Center's control on state list. So these are some of the main issues, okay? Apart from that, we have other issues also, like in the case of Jammu Kashmir or Punjab or Northeast areas, the way central forces were brought in, central forces were brought in I mean, Indian Army was brought in Golden Temple in Amritsar, right? Law and order is a domain of state governments. So Punjab government should be allowed to deal with its own law and order issues. So despite that, army had to be brought in to put down the issue in Golden Temple. So that was all. That is all some of the instances of central forces being used in the states without even the state's consent. And this is especially true with respect to Jammu Kashmir. When central forces are brought in into the state chief minister loses all his image, popularity. It's like I am a chief minister of Jammu Kashmir, and suddenly central forces come. They announced curfew and everything. The chief minister is totally helpless there. Okay, because he feels it's a very great insult. It's like he feels totally overpowered by the central forces. His police mechanism is all hiding behind. That kind of an impression is communicated. This is definitely one of the irritant. And another irritant, most of the issues are with respect to revenue distribution. This is one big topic in itself. So what are the issues in revenue distribution? Can someone tell me? Can you think and tell me what were the problems in case of revenue distribution between center and states? Legislative council must be created in accordance with state's opinion. When you read the constitution, you will come to understand legislative councils can be created only with the state's opinion. The state assembly has to pass a resolution with a special majority that we want a legislative council in the state. Only then it can be created by a parliament by law. So you cannot say that parliament itself can create a legislative council or abolish it. That cannot actually happen. Okay. Can you think of the different problems in revenue distribution? Financial issues between center and states, what all could be there? First is, of course, planning commission, discretionary grants. So there was a partisan manner of resource allocation. Yes, accepted. What else? Non-allocation of funds to states as FC was appointed by the president. No. Or you can even modify your point and say, not always finance commission's recommendations are properly implemented by the president. Finance commission says you should give this much amount of money to the states. At times there is a delay in releasing the amount. Maybe the central government will not give it on that financial year. They will give it after one more financial year. So the recommendations were accepted. I mean, definitely finance commission's recommendations will not be thrown in the dustbin. That will not happen. But how timely and with what sincerity it is implemented, that is definitely a matter of concern, no doubt about that. Regional discrepancy, southern states were penalized for the progress they made. No. Where were they penalized? So do you think that southern states were penalized in finance commission's recommendations all these years? Southern states were actually given more benefit than they really have to have got. Okay, that is why the president, do you think president's insistence in the terms of reference of 15th Finance Commission to move on to 2011 census population estimates, do you think it is correct or is it wrong? Well, that if you don't move on to 2011 estimates, if you're still stuck with 1971 estimates, it is not a rightful thing to do. What is the latest census figures? It is only based on that you should be allocating money to different states. You cannot stick to the same 1971 census. So I don't think southern states were penalized or anything. No. That is not a correct thing. Another problem here is the amount of taxation powers in the hands of center is the reason why center has access to so much of funds. So why don't you give it in the hands of state governments? Why not make constitutional amendment to 7th schedule and give away some of the powers of center's taxation powers? Why not it be given in the hands of states? That is definitely another issue in resource distribution. Okay, what else? So look at 14th Finance Commission. 42% of devolution to states, 58% of devolution to center. So this was from 2015 to 2020. Do you know 14th Finance Commission was so much appreciated by various state governments? Do you know that? 14th Finance Commission was hailed as the champion of fiscal federalism. Do you know what is the reason behind that? Why? Why so? Any answers? Yes, very good. Because they increased the share from 32% to 42%, right? So, as per the recommendations of 13th Finance Commission, just 5 years before, 2010 to 2015, the share of states was only 32% of the resources. Share of center was 68%. Imagine this is 60 years after independence. This is the sharing ratio, 32 rupees for out of 100 rupees for the state governments after 60 years of independence, right? So imagine throughout the 60 years how difficult the journey should have been. Maybe in the first Finance Commission the sharing ratio might be 15%, slowly it could have raised to 20, 25, 30. After 60 years it has come to 32%. So in the era of conflict, in that period, the share of states would have been even lower, maybe 20, 25%. Correct? So this is itself another reason for conflict. Already center has too much of taxation powers in its hands, and even the Finance Commission's sharing formula was so negligent, it was so tiny in terms of the divisible pool, share of divisible pool of resources. This was also another issue, irritant between center-state relations. Okay. So these are some of the revenue issues, revenue sharing issues between center and states. And all these issues is what you will find reflected in Rajamanar Committee. You will find them being reflected in West Bengal Memorandum. Okay, all these kind of issues, the solutions are what is recommended by all these state-appointed bodies. But none of them were implemented because the center was very high-handed in its approach. Only in the 80s, when the center starts getting weaker and weaker, slowly center had to oblige to the interest of the states. Indira Gandhi appoints Sarkaria Commission, 83, 4 years of work, 87 it tables its report, and a decent amount of changes, progress was made in the way center-state relations have been conducted so far. Okay, so these were all some of the issues with respect to center-state relations. And moreover, another issue was, very less share of divisible pool of resources for states. That is also another issue. And today, if you see, another point to be noted is, today income tax is a part of divisible pool of resources. Today, customs duties is a part of divisible pool of resources. And corporation tax is a part of divisible pool of resources. So corporation tax was made as a part of divisible pool of resources only in the 90s. Until 1990s, this was not a part of divisible pool of resources. So Sarkaria Commission's recommendation itself was that make corporation tax also as a part. So are you able to appreciate what I'm trying to say? I'm saying that already taxation powers are too excessive in the hands of center. Even with all the taxes, out of the taxes collected, only a very small portion of the taxes collected was a part of divisible pool. Only income tax was originally there in the part of divisible pool. Even customs and excise duties were slowly brought in because of the demand of the states. Customs and customs and export duties were brought in as a part of divisible pool. In the initial, when the constitution took shape, only income tax was a part of divisible pool. Many taxes of the center were kept outside the divisible pool of resources. But today, only cess and surcharge is outside the ambit of divisible pool. Everything else has been now brought in under the sharing formula. Okay. So these are so many issues with revenue sharing. One is smaller tax base of states compared to center. Next is even out of the taxes collected by the center, many taxes were kept outside the ambit of divisible pool of resources. Finance Commission's recommendations to the states was not satisfactory to the needs of the states. As you can see, this quantum jump happened only here recently. Before that, at earlier periods, even lower sharing done to the states. The partisan role of planning commission. All these are erstwhile issues, but you can add one more issue to the modern times, that is centrally sponsored schemes. This is one of the modern day financial issues in center-state relations. So do you know what is a centrally sponsored scheme? Remaining by the states. Okay. Any examples? Are you aware of any example of centrally sponsored schemes? Okay, you have so many examples. All right. I'll give you an example. You have MGNREGS, Swachh Bharat Mission. So MGNREGS is a classic example of centrally sponsored schemes. So as I told you, under Article 282, the central government can even spend on subjects which are not in the union list, right? That is the essence of 282. Central can spend even on subjects which are not in its own domain. It can even spend on subjects in state matters also. So, this issue of the concept of centrally sponsored schemes, it started with the success of Green Revolution, because otherwise the center's role was not, if you look at the different 97 subjects in union list, those subjects are not for welfare purposes. They are to protect India, to maintain the unity and integrity of a concept called as India, to establish common standards. So these are some of the functions, right? And with doing those functions of defense of India, taking care of atomic energy, railways, running trains, the center was not able to reach to the doorstep of the people. So that is why the center started slowly interfering into welfare activities. So it starts involving in constructing toilets, constructing houses for people, Awas Yojana. It starts interfering in providing livelihood to people. So all these are centers' interventions in non-union list matters so as to improve the welfare of the people. Okay. But center understands that why should it take all the burden? Okay, it has to take a major share of credit, but let me also share the burden with the state governments also, because it is going to help the state governments also. So that is why the center has structured certain schemes like MGNREGS in such a way that both center as well as states will have to take the financial burden of implementation of this particular scheme. Okay. So what is the problem here? So, and centrally sponsored schemes are optional. It is not mandatory for states to accept it, because you cannot impose a burden on the states, because the essential principle of CSS is sharing of the burden between center and states. The burden can be different. It can be, for some schemes, it can be 75% of the burden to be borne by center, 25 to be borne by states. For some schemes, it can be 90:10. For some, it can be 60:40. For some, it can be 50:50. So it has a lot of different variations. So the center cannot force the states to take the burden of centrally sponsored schemes. So it is actually optional in nature. If the state governments want to take up a particular scheme, they can take up, or they can even avoid taking up a particular scheme. But what is the problem in centrally sponsored schemes? Can someone tell me? MGNREGS, this is the example, right? This is the concept behind CSS. What do you think is the issue in centrally sponsored schemes? Conditional grants. That's correct. What do you mean by conditional grants? Excess fiscal burden on already financially deprived states. But that's what I told, no? The states have a choice. They can just avoid centrally sponsored. They can say that I am already burdened. I cannot take up the scheme. Lack of funds allocation. You can say lack of timely release of funds. Without fund allocation, the scheme will not be implemented. Okay. You cannot say lack of fund allocation, but you can say timely availability of funds is a major issue. Correct. So I'll tell you, so 3 different issues have been pointed out. One is conditional grants. Yeah, so center imposes a lot of additional conditions that you have to see. There has to be some kind of an operational flexibility that should be given to the state governments. Not all states are same. You cannot implement the same NREGs in the same manner in Odisha, tribal, jungle, lack of connectivity areas. You cannot implement it in the same manner as how you're implementing it in Tamil Nadu. Okay, you cannot make it conditional that on a weekly basis an engineer should visit that project. He should take a latitude, longitude, GPS coordinated photograph. He should upload it in this portal on that spot. And only if it is all done, we will release the funds properly in time. Making all these kind of conditions, this one uniform approach is actually very difficult to be implemented across India. That is where the problem comes. So this conditions imposed, and other conditions are also imposed, like you have to do the audit properly in time. So that actually reduces operational flexibility for the states. States have nothing to contribute. They have to only contribute the money. Strict monitoring is done by the center. Sometimes the money is even bypassed by the, center does not even transfer this money to the states. It immediately directly transfers to the panchayats. So these kind of issues are definitely there. Apart from that, when you pointed out there is excess fiscal burden on already financially deprived states, I'll tell you how the reality works. When the scheme is launched, it is launched with the promise that the sharing ratio is 75:25. Center will bear 75, Tamil Nadu will bear 25 rupees out of 100 rupees expenditure. After introducing the scheme, after 2 years, 3 years down the line, center will reduce its share, 60:40. You see, it will be branded as if it's a it is called as a centrally sponsored scheme. The name is all in Hindi. Okay, Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Nobody in Tamil Nadu understands what that even means. It is all labeled in Hindi, and 50:50, equal sharing of burden, but all the other problems remain. You will not timely transfer the funds. You will not allow the states to come up with their own guidelines. So you will directly transfer the money to PRIs, bypassing the states. You will not. So these kind of problems are there, irrespective of states also now forced to contribute an equal share. Okay, so this is becoming a big burden. The states are enticed into accepting a centrally sponsored scheme because it seems to be very attractive. And do you think a chief minister of a state can afford to reject MGNREGs? Do you think Edappadi Palaniswamy can in reality, even though it is said it is voluntary, does it how it will work in reality? Do you think a chief minister can afford to say that no, I will come up with my own livelihood scheme. I don't want your MGNREGs because I know that these problems will all come up in the future. So I don't want your centrally sponsored scheme. Is it even possible? Politically, is it possible? Yes, vote bank politics. Immediately, BJP foot soldiers will go all over Tamil Nadu. What do I say? Scolding and abusing chief minister, because what they will say is, Tamil Nadu, if we would have accepted MGNREGs, we could have got 20,000 crore for this financial year. So much crores of lakhs of families could have been benefited. But because of this chief minister, that money is gone. Otherwise, you would have got 3,000 rupees per month in your bank account. So that is a strong political deterrent. In reality, chief ministers will not be able to afford rejecting centrally sponsored schemes. They are enticed to join centrally sponsored scheme, and then slowly this kind of a process happens. So states' burden keeps on increasing, whereas center's burden keeps on decreasing, and the publicity, everything, you will find Modi's photo, Amit Shah's photo, everything will be there. So why should states take the burden for something which was not how it was projected to them? So these kind of problems are there in centrally sponsored schemes. That is why, in reality, when 14th Finance Commission recommendations was given, it was very happy. Like 32% share to 42% to the states. States were all very happy. Immediately after it was accepted, center made these kind of reductions in all its centrally sponsored schemes. It reduced its share. So it is like, on one hand, Finance Commission is giving money. On the other hand, center, because of reducing its contribution to centrally sponsored schemes, has all taken up the extra money that the states have actually got as a result of 14th Finance Commission recommendations. So CSS is definitely a contemporary issue in terms of centrally sponsored scheme, in terms of center-state relations. So there's a lot of proposals that have been studied by Niti Aayog, by erstwhile Planning Commission also, and they have asked for rationalization of centrally sponsored schemes, because each and every ministry now has some 5-6 centrally sponsored schemes running. So whenever, if there's a question on centrally sponsored schemes in the examination, you can even point out by saying that rationalization must be done. One ministry should have only one flagship centrally sponsored scheme. You can have MGNREGs as a flagship scheme of Ministry of Rural Development. Similarly, Housing Ministry can have Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana. Don't allow centrally sponsored schemes to keep on increasing, because center wants to keep on increasing centrally sponsored scheme. That is an easier way for central government to come and reach the doorstep of each and every voter, right? But it is becoming an issue in federalism. That is why many committees, Planning Commission, in a study paper, they have all pointed out the need to rationalize centrally sponsored schemes, confining to one flagship scheme per ministry. You can do your own groundwork, homework, and find out what other issues and what other recommendations can be done with respect to centrally sponsored schemes. So these are all some of the problems with respect to resource distribution. Okay. All right. So we have seen the different irritants, issues in center-state relations. We'll just have a look at different bodies and their recommendations. So it starts from Rajamanar Committee report, Tamil Nadu government. So let me look at the year in which it is 1969. Yeah. And then after that you have Anandpur Sahib resolution. So this was all in the era of conflict, when regional parties, opposition ruled states were going against the center all out, and they had a lot of suggestions in this regard. So each governments. So how do you? So let's say I will tell you a recommendation. Okay. Out of the total revenue raised by center from all sources, 75% should be allocated to the states. Out of the total revenue raised, divisible pool of resources, not divisible pool, out of any tax that is collected by the center, 75% should be given to the states. If this is a question in the examination, which of the following committees recommended for allocation of 75% of center's taxes to the states? 3-4 bodies are given. Okay, what would be your answer? Is there a way to remember it? Raj Mannar. No. The answer is West Bengal Memorandum. Okay, you have to identify some ways of getting the answer right. Let's say West Bengal memorandum, Communist Party. Communist Party means what? Haves and have-nots, ideas of economy behind it, right? Economics. So when you find some kind of a recommendation on monetary aspect, you have to just immediately find, oh, okay, it should be West Bengal memorandum, something like that. Otherwise, if you blindly start memorizing each and every recommendation, you will definitely not get confused on the day of the examination. So don't do that. If a recommendation is about financial emergency provisions should be scrapped, that is also West Bengal memorandum. Okay. If it's about, let's say, if it is a recommendation on center's function should be restricted only to defense, security, and communications. Apart from that, all other functions of union list must be transferred to states. If this is a recommendation, out of the three bodies, which one would you attribute it to? Any committee constituted by the states? Oh yeah, of course. It should be a committee constituted by the states, but among these three, which one? That's my question. So some of you have said Tamil Nadu, one of you have said Anandpur Sahib resolution. Correct. Anandpur Sahib is the right answer. What would be the way to remember it? So look at the nature of the demand. Just three functions with the center, everything else give to the states. Okay. So this is like almost asking for, so this is similar to the status of Jammu Kashmir, correct? In Jammu Kashmir, that was the original constitutional scheme under Article 370. Under Article 370, only defense, external affairs and communications will be in the hands of center. Every other function will be in the hands of states. That is the scheme of Article 370. So among these three governments, which one would have demanded for such a kind of a treatment? It is this body, Punjab, Akali Dal. You know, the separatist movement in Punjab, they wanted to have a separate Khalistan for themselves. So you have to remember on those lines. So Anandpur Sahib resolution was actually it was actually a communal body. It was a communal propaganda. You cannot even call it as a federal propaganda or anything. It was Akali Dal, which was completely washed out in the elections. It lost to Congress. And Akali Dal was a communal party, just like Muslim League. So Akali Dal has to now face the same prospectus as how Muslim League had faced after the 1937 elections, when Muslim League was very badly defeated. Jinnah had no other option. He had to raise an imaginary fear. He had to whip up the passions of Muslims. He had to ask for a separate country for Muslims. That's the same extent to which Akali Dal started going into in this period of time, because they had no politics to do after that, because almost all of their demands were satisfied. A separate state of Punjab was carved out by Indira Gandhi and given to the Sikhs. Even though the demand for Punjab, a separate Punjab for Sikhs, was actually not based on linguistic lines. It was a communal agenda. So for the first time in India, Indira Gandhi budged to suit the demands of the Sikhs. Until then, even the first language commission, it had rejected when first language commission, what is it called? VP Dar commission, no? What is the first, not language commission. What is the first states reorganization commission? The first state reorganization commission, when it was formed, it toured all across India to listen to demands for separate linguistic states. At JVP committee, So at that time, they had clearly denied that Sikhs must be given a separate Punjabi speaking state, because Punjabi and Hindi are very, very close to each other. The script alone changes. Spoken wise, it is very same. There is no problem in understanding Hindi or Punjabi for either of the people. So there is no need for giving a separate linguistic state for Sikhs. So they were able to identify that this is actually a communal demand and we should not allow communal demands to be satisfied. But in spite of that, Indira Gandhi made an allowance and Sikhs were even given a separate Punjabi speaking state. That is why Congress was voted to power. People were happy with Indira Gandhi Congress. Akali Dal was washed out in the state assembly elections. Now they have no other option. So what did they do? They met in a place called as Anandpur Sahib. They passed a 18-point agenda. Okay, and one of the agenda is what is given in Lakshmikant. That is, they wanted to have a separate autonomy on the same lines of Punjab. have one all powers of center should be should be given in the hands of states. These are general objectives. Out of the 18 points, only what is pertaining commonly to all states is given in your Lakshmikant. That is, the center's role should be minimized to only 3 functions. All other functions must be given in the hands of states. But the remaining points of that 18-point agenda is not given in your textbook, because that is not necessary for center-state relations. Maybe that's a part of post-independence history. All other points are all related to Sikhs, protection of Sikhism, and carving out areas from Rajasthan, Himachal, Haryana, and adding them all. So whatever districts, wherever there are Sikh majority people living, all that should be carved out from those neighboring states, should all be merged with Punjab. These kind of demands were all there. Okay. And a separate civil code for Punjabis. So such kind of demands were all put forward. Anyway, so when you come across a very strong worded statement like union's functions limited to only 3 functions, it should be it's a very separatist kind of a demand, almost on the verge of autonomy. So you can point that this should be from Anandpur Sahib resolution. Okay. So if it is a demand of, let's say, Article 356 must be abolished from the Constitution. If this would have been a demand, which committee would you attribute it to? Yes, right. Rajmanar Committee. Very palpable, because DMK government was very scared about how Kerala government was toppled in 1959 because of misuse of president's rule. So it was a clear indication to what can also happen to the DMK government also. So that was a point of Rajamanar Committee. And as I told you, abolition of All India services was also a part of Rajamanar Committee demand. Okay. And apart from that, planning commission to be disbanded. Okay. So these kind of demands you will find in Rajamanar Committee. So it is quite simple. You have to just go through them, and you have to find out your own ways of remembering these demands. Okay. So yeah, one of the other demand of Rajamanar Committee is interstate council should be set up immediately, and finance commission should be made as a permanent body. The planning commission must be disbanded and placed should be taken by another statutory body. So you have such kind of demands. All India services must be abolished. Certain subjects of union list and concurrent list should be transferred to state list. Okay, will you be able to manage it on your own? I think there is nothing to be taught about these recommendations, right? You have to just read them. I have pointed out the different issues and irritants. You keep that in your mind, and these bodies will come up with solutions for these issues. Maybe the solutions will be repeating. Same 2-3 recommendations of Rajamanar Committee will also be there in West Bengal memorandum also. That is possible. You just have to go through that, and you will be able to master these recommendations. Apart from that, we have 2 other bodies, central government appointed bodies. So which of the body among the 2 would have gone and delved in depth about emergency provisions? Tell me, among these 2 bodies, which body would have gone and delved into emergency provisions and would have given a lot of recommendations about restricting the role of governor, what kind of a person should be chosen as a governor, such matters? Which body do you think it could have actually done? Sarkaria, right? Because after 1992, 1994 SR Bommai judgment, misuse of Article 356 has virtually come to an end. And with misuse of Article 356, the fear of governors have also almost come to an end after the post-1994 period. So there is no reason for Panchi Commission to have gone into misuse of Article 356. It is more to do with Sarkaria Commission. So that way you can relate it. Okay. And I told you, interstate, okay, I'll give you another question. Which of the following commission recommended for the establishment of an interstate council? Which of the following commission recommended for introduction of Interstate Council. See, Interstate Council was a provision given in Constitution under Article 263, but none of the presidents have established an interstate council. Yeah, you can point it out as Sarkaria, because I told you the first interstate council was set up in 1990. So it was actually based on the recommendations of Sarkaria Commission. Until then, states were crying for interstate councils, nothing was created. But Sarkaria Commission gave its recommendation, it was accepted. The first interstate council was set up, I think, during VP Singh's period. So this can be a recommendation. Okay. And as I told you, corporation tax was added into the divisible pool of resources based on Sarkaria Commission's recommendation. And all India services, state bodies were asking for abolishment of all India services, but Sarkaria Commission said, no, all India services are necessary for maintaining the country intact. It gives some kind of a homogeneity and professionalism to bureaucracy all across the country. So hence, we cannot do away with all India services. We have to retain all India services. That was the opinion of Sarkaria Commission with respect to all India services. And as I told you, it was in the previous period before Sarkaria Commission when Indian Army was brought in Punjab, and many such instances where army was used to sort out local law and order problems. So that was all given as a recommendation of Sarkaria Commission. It said that do not mobilize, do not involve central forces until the state government asks you. If the state government requests you to send armed forces, then you can send them. Don't do it unilaterally on your own. Okay. So these kind of recommendations you will come across. And okay, I'll ask you another question then. The union government should occupy only those subjects in concurrent list which are absolutely necessary to achieve uniformity of policy in demonstrable national interest. Which of the following commission would have suggested a minimal intervention of union government in concurrent list matters? If this would have been the question among the two bodies, which one do you think could have been the possible answer? Of course, Panchi Commission. LPG era, more role to states. This is the era of federal assertion by the state governments. So there, in that point of time, a commission was created. So definitely it would have suggested for very lesser intervention of union in concurrent list matters, right? So you can make such kind of an association, right? The procedure laid down for impeachment of president can be made applicable for the impeachment of governors as well. Okay, which of the following commission recommended for a procedure for impeachment of governors? What would be your answer? That's correct. Panchi Commission. So more of states' interest. So this is, you please go through these recommendations. I'm sure you will be able to find out the answers yourself. It's easy to study them. It's not at all difficult. You can manage them. If you have doubts, you can come and ask me in the next class. Until I think you will manage it yourself. Should not have an issue. It is all a matter of how well you're able to remember these issues. Okay, how well you're able to remember these recommendations. Because I think in 2019, one of the recommendation of Sarkaria Commission was actually asked. Okay. So I think I'll just avoid this discussion. We can move on. What is the constitutional provisions with respect to interstate trade and commerce? Can the state governments restrict interstate trade and commerce? Is it possible or is it not possible? Yes, they can. When you will have a look at the constitution, you'll be able to get the answer for that. So, can the parliament restrict interstate trade and commerce? Okay. Yeah. See, subject. I think in Lakshmikant, what would be given is trade, commerce, and intercourse throughout the territory of India shall be free. Only that will be given. So you should not be under the assumption that states cannot restrict interstate trade and commerce. When you read the original text, it's given subject to other provisions of this part. Okay. So this part, other provision 30234, in this subject to other provisions, interstate trade and commerce shall be free. So it means that yes, there are some restrictions which can be imposed on interstate trade and commerce by parliament as well as by state legislatures. Okay. So what is given here in the constitution? Notwithstanding anything in Article 302, neither Parliament nor the legislature shall have power to make any law giving or authorizing the giving any preference to one state over another. Okay, discrimination should not happen. That is what it means. It means that, can you actually tell me any restriction on interstate trade and commerce? Are you aware of any practical examples of restrictions on interstate trade and commerce? Are you aware of any restrictions? Any examples? Corona time. Okay, what happened during Corona time? What restrictions were there on interstate trade and commerce? Octroi tax for entry of goods. Well, that is not a restriction. That is not restriction. That is just a taxation power of the state governments. Okay, that is the power given in the list 2 of 7th schedule. That is not a restriction. During famine or any other situation where there is a shortage of food, that's a very correct answer. So this is, if there is a scarcity of essential commodities, who has the power to restrict interstate trade and commerce? It is the parliament which can do so. If there is a scarcity of essential commodities, in that case, it is the parliament alone which can make restrictions. State governments will not do that. Okay. So that is there in this provision, in this particular part of the constitution. My question is, okay, any other examples? Do you know, are you aware that in Tamil Nadu, the sale of gutka is not allowed? Gutka, tobacco, chewing products. Theoretically, it is not allowed. Do you know that? Yes. That is because Constitution gives the states the power to restrict the sale and trade of gutka inside Tamil Nadu on public interest, public health interest. It is because of that the sale and trade of gutka within Tamil Nadu is actually banned. That is the one kind of restriction. Okay. So what the Constitution says is, when a parliament or when a state legislature makes these restrictions, so can Tamil Nadu make a restriction? Gutka manufactured from Kerala is banned, whereas gutka manufactured from Andhra Pradesh is allowed, because Tamil Nadu and Andhra Pradesh are, let's say, they are ruled by the same party. So Tamil Nadu wants to be soft on Andhra Pradesh gutka. Can it be allowed? That cannot be allowed. That is what is given in the Constitution. When making restrictions, either the parliament nor the state legislatures shall discriminate between the states, allowing restriction on only one state, allowing products on the other state. That is not allowed. That will be discriminate. So this is the only criteria which you have to be observant about. But otherwise, both parliament as well as state legislatures can make restrictions on interstate trade and commerce. So keep this in your mind. Okay. So nothing in clause 1 shall prevent parliament from making any law So discrimination, if it is declared, it is for the purpose of dealing with situation arising from scarcity of any goods. So Parliament, to deal with scarcity of any goods, can make such kind of laws. It's only with state legislature you cannot have such kind of restrictions. Okay, discriminate between goods so imported or manufactured. So that restrictions is applicable to state legislatures. Okay, we'll just look at other important provisions of constitution relating to center-state relations. So all these are not necessary. Borrowing by center and states. Okay, in Andhra we have that Bhutan alcohol should be sold in Andhra Pradesh only. Yeah, that can also be a restriction done on public interest. Even in Tamil Nadu also, sale of liquor from outside Karnataka, you cannot buy liquor and come and sell it in Tamil Nadu. So that is also done in public interest. You cannot make Tamil Nadu a drunkard state by bringing in cheap liquor from all other parts and selling it in Tamil Nadu. So that is one kind of restriction state government has actually put. So in the larger public interest, if Tamil Nadu people die, it has to be only from Tamil Nadu liquor, not from other liquor from outside Tamil Nadu. So this is actually a restriction which each and every state has actually imposed, so as to curb the menace of excessive drinking. Okay. So of course, Andhra is right in having such kind of restrictions. There is no problem. So the next thing, next part, we have to discuss about borrowing by center and by the states. So from what sources can center borrow money? Central government is short of funds. It has to resort to borrowing. So from what sources can it actually borrow from? See, states as well as center, when they borrow, they have to have a guarantee. They have to have a collateral, right? You go and borrow in a bank asks for a collateral. It is by placing that collateral, you will be allowed to borrow. Similarly, for both center and states, for them to borrow, they have to produce a guarantee. For center, it is based on the guarantee of the Consolidated Fund of India. By the states, if Tamil Nadu wants to borrow, it has to be on the basis of the guarantee of Consolidated Fund of the state. Okay, but there are some restrictions, more restrictions in the case of state governments if they want to borrow. Not so much of restrictions for Government of India. The executive power extends to borrowing upon the security of Consolidated Fund of India within such limits. There are always limits. FRBM Act prescribes for such kind of limits. Similarly, for Tamil Nadu state government legislature would have made its own laws, okay, to govern public borrowing. So let's say Tamil Nadu's Consolidated Fund of the state is the size might be 20,000 crore or 50,000 crore. Does it mean that Tamil Nadu government can just keep, okay, this is my revenue collection for one financial year, I get a total revenue of 50,000 crore, you keep this entire 50,000 crore as a guarantee and give me 50,000 crores. It cannot borrow like that. There are limits, maybe up to 5% of the consolidated fund, 10% of the consolidated fund. You cannot borrow beyond certain limits prescribed, fixed by the state legislatures. So similarly, both government, center and state, they can borrow only within certain limits prescribed by law, by respective legislatures. Okay. So Government of India can borrow from abroad. They can get external aid. They can borrow from financial institutions abroad. They can raise from capital markets abroad. They can raise money from domestic markets also within India. So they have a greater flexibility in mobilizing money by borrowing. When it comes to states, that is not the case. State governments cannot borrow from abroad. Okay, they cannot borrow from foreign countries by giving consolidated fund of the state as a collateral. No, it cannot be done. And if there is already a pending loan by the state, okay, state governments already have loan amount pending, which has to be repaid. If that is the case, if they want to have more borrowing, it can be done only after getting the consent of the center. Without the permission of the center, the state cannot resort to further borrowing if there are already outstanding amounts that needs to be paid. This is like a supervision of center on the state's borrowing, so that the states don't involve in reckless borrowing. Okay, center should actually be cautious about allowing states to borrow. So this is also some kind of a tilt that you find in the constitution towards the center. While center can borrow from many different sources, the states do not have the same kind of flexibility in borrowing. You can go through it. I think it's given in simpler words in Lakshmikant. Okay. So what is mentioned here is states can borrow upon the security of consolidated fund within certain limits prescribed by the legislature of the state by law. Okay. The government of India may, subject to conditions, may be laid, okay, give guarantees in respect of loans raised by the state. Yeah. What it says is, yeah. What it says is the government of India can also give security, can give guarantee that if the state government is not paying back the money, I will pay you back. So this was the option that the center had given to the states to mobilize, to raise money from RBI. During this COVID-19 time, GST collections was also down. So because of which the constitutionally promised GST compensation to the states was not being paid by the center to the states because GST collections was actually, it has come down. So center was also in a helpless position. So what did the center say? Center told states, I'll open a special mechanism with the RBI. You can go and directly mobilize additional loans from RBI. I will give you a guarantee to the RBI directly. What is the guarantee? The center knows that anyway it has to compensate 10,000 crores to Tamil Nadu because of GST collections. So that 10,000 crore is my guarantee to the RBI. So RBI, please lend money to the states. So they may come asking for money. You give money. I am guaranteeing if the state governments do not pay back, anyway I have their share of revenues with me as a collateral. I will be compensating you for that. Right? So that is what is given in clause 2. The government of India can give guarantees for the states if the states wants to raise money by borrowing. But do you know whether did the states exercise that particular option? There was a conflict there also. Do you know that? When center asked the states, you go and borrow money directly from RBI. I will give guarantee to the RBI. The state governments were reluctant to borrow. Do you know why? What was the reason? Yeah, say states wanted center to borrow, that's right. But why? Why is the case? And allocated to the states, right? But why? Interest payment can be a burden on the states otherwise. Okay, that's true. Very correct answer. Correct. And moreover, see, if my credit score is good, right? If my credit score, my past history of repaying my debts is all very good, banks will be more eager to lend me money. Correct? Banks will be more ready to lend me money if my credit payment history is all good. If I'm very strong financially, banks will be ready to give interest loans at a cheaper rate of interest. But if my credit score is bad, if my finances itself is in bad shape, then I'll have to, if I go to banks, banks will say, I cannot give you money, or I don't think you'll be able to repay the loan. So I will go to a SETG, informal channels of credit. I'll ask him, please give me loan. He will say, you are very risky, but still I'll give you loan, but you have to repay with the interest of 20%, So that is the problem here. When states go and borrow money from RBI, the interest rate is too high. Center borrows, interest rate is low. That is why the states wanted center to borrow from RBI and give it to the states. But center was saying you borrow directly, so that center wanted to avoid the interest burden, pass it on to the states. So this was a correct issue with respect to why there was a conflict there also. So this is what is given in clause 2. Clause 3. A state may not, without the consent of the government, yeah, this is what I said right now. If there is already outstanding loans which the states have to repay, they cannot mobilize additional loans without the consent of the center. That is a very natural statement. Okay, so that is all about borrowing by center and states. All these are not really necessary. Okay, exemption of property and income of this is also not really necessary. What it says is you have a lot of central government offices. You have income tax offices, customs offices all over Chennai. Many central government offices are there. So such kind of offices will be exempted from paying local land tax, okay, municipal tax, all that will be exempted. Same applies with state level properties in Delhi. For example, if you go to Delhi, you will have Tamil Nadu House, Kerala House, all these are state government state offices, right? So they are also exempted from paying such kind of taxes. So that is what is said here. What you have to note here in the other clause is that, let's say, operations connected for commercial purposes. Okay, so authorizing trade or a business of any kind. Let's say there is a particular Tamil Nadu Electronics Corporation. Okay, Tamil Nadu Electronics Corporation is manufacturing laptops to be given for free to students, school students in Tamil Nadu. This is a function which is not commercial in nature. So in these kind of manufacturers, central government will not levy GST. It will not ask for profits, accounts, no income tax. Nothing will be levied on these kind of products. But if the Tamil Nadu Electronics Corporation starts manufacturing laptops and it starts selling in the open market, that would be a category of commercial operations, business operations, trade. So that will be definitely be taxed. This is the differentiation you should actually know, which is actually given in the constitution itself. So normally the property and activities of the state, income of the state will be exempted from taxation if it is not done for business or trade purposes. Okay, you can have this in your mind. Okay, simple procedure. Similarly, exemption for electricity and water and all these kind of things. Okay. Oh yeah, I think I've just forgotten to discuss about it. This is GST Council, Article 279A. I'll just run through the Constitution itself. 279A, when was it introduced? It was an amendment. So 246A, 269A, 279A, all these three constitutional provisions were introduced by the 101st Constitutional Amendment Act. 101st Amendment Act of 2016, that is because to implement GST, right? So a GST Council was created. Who are the members? It's given here. Union Finance Minister, Minister of State in charge of Revenue or Finance. He's also a member. And ministers, there will be one minister from each state. Most probably it will be the finance minister or any other minister nominated by the chief minister. Okay, so they'll all be members of GST Council. So as you know, the purpose of GST Council is to recommend for different tax slabs what items should be brought under which tax slab. It is for that purpose we have a body called as GST Council. Which items should be kept outside the purview of GST, like petroleum, motor spirit, cigarettes. So that is also a function of GST Council. Okay, so goods that may be exempted to, what should be the taxes, cess and surcharge levied by the union, and which should be brought in goods and service tax. And yeah, we have a limit, a threshold limit of it's only when your turnover exceeds maybe 20 lakhs or 1 crore. It's only after that you will be brought under the GST bracket. Otherwise, you'll be treated in a different manner. Basically, it is to recommend tax rates on and to recommend assessees who all are covered under the GST bracket. Okay, that is the purpose of GST Council. So you can go through it, and yeah, as I told you, what date onwards petroleum, natural gas, and all these spirits will be subsumed under the GST regime. Until then, it can be kept outside the purview of GST. So that is also a function of GST Council. What is a quorum? This is something that you have to notice. 1/2 of the total members shall constitute the quorum at its meetings. That is, without at least half of the members, finance minister, minister of state, and all finance ministers of different states, among them, at least half of them should be there. Otherwise, no meeting can be held. That is the quorum. It's not 1/10 or anything. It's 1/2 of the total members. Okay. And another factual data that you have to remember here is every decision that is taken shall be taken by a majority of not less than 3/4 of the weighted votes of the members present and voting. Okay. What is this 3/4 of the weighted vote of the members? That is, The vote of central government alone will have 1/3 of the total votes cast. The vote of all state governments taken together shall have a weightage of 2/3 of the total votes cast. So it says that center will have 1/3 weightage. States all together will have 2/3 weightage when it comes to voting. And it also says that no proposal is considered to be voted unless it enjoys 3/4 of the votes, right? Unless you have 3/4 of the total votes polled. GST Council is a constitutional body, right? Yes, of course, it is a constitutional body. 279A. So what does it mean? 3/4 of the total votes. And can you find out some relationship between the two? What does it mean? Link them and tell me what is the inference that you draw out of this. Out of the total votes, 3/4 of the votes is mandatory for any proposal to be accepted in the GST Council. But look at the composition and tell me what is implied here. State's concern is very important. No. It means that center's consent is mandatory. Without the consent of center, nothing can happen. Because center has a 33% weight. States together, they have 66% weight. For any proposal to be voted, it should have a 75% acceptance, which means that you should get the acceptance of the center here. But center alone cannot get a proposal pushed because it needs to get the remaining amount of weightage also. So it has to have states also on board. But just because you have all the states together, they cannot vote against the preference of the center. So this is how a center has been given a primary role here. Of course, center has a greater responsibility here. So just because states come together, it doesn't mean that they can collude together and they can bypass the wishes of the center. That is not possible. Any consent, any proposal to be accepted in the GST Council must enjoy the support of the center. This is what you should actually observe here. Okay. All right. I think we'll stop here. You can go through. There are some other provisions also which will be there in your Lakshmikant. Center's control over states' states' legislation. If state government introduces any bill for the purpose of governing interstate trade and commerce, let's say Tamil Nadu introduces a bill, Tamil Nadu Agricultural Produce Marketing Committee Act, a bill is introduced. Such a bill will definitely have an impact on interstate trade and commerce, right? So such a bill, it has to be reserved for the consideration of the president. That is something else you will find in the different constitutional provisions regarding center-state relations. So in the Mari, there will be some other provisions also which you can come across in your textbook. You read it, and if you have doubts, you can come and ask me. Okay. I think the difficult aspects and all I have already explained to you. If there is anything left out, those are very simple areas which you will be able to read and understand yourself. So if you have doubts, you can come and ask me tomorrow. Tomorrow I'll start with local self-government. Okay, we'll start with that. How many classes are required for all topics, for all subjects to be completed? I don't know. I think maybe your classes will go on till the end of this month, I'm assuming, because there's a plan to complete portions for all batches by the end of this month. I think might be. You may have classes until the end of this month. And I think for polity, we may require another 6 more classes maximum, not more than that. Yeah, 6, maximum 7, not more than that. Okay. So today is Tuesday. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah, within Sunday, we'll be able to complete your polity. All right. So we'll conclude here. So go through your textbooks, and if you have doubts, you please come and ask me tomorrow. Okay. Any other issues? Any other doubts? Sir, will prelims get postponed? Just asking to plan preparation. It might. You never know. It might get postponed. But you don't have to be worried about all these things, okay? Your preparation is just going on as usual. Whether it's postponed by 1 month or not, it doesn't really matter much. Even if it is kept tomorrow, I think you will be able to give the same kind of performance as how you will be giving even after a month. Yeah, maybe 1 more month is good enough time. You still have what, 1.5 months more, which is a good enough time. I think 1.5 months is good enough time with the way you are giving answers and all. I think it's more than sufficient to clear prelims. Okay, so you just go on with your preparation. Your tips for attempting next year. Well, next year is too long a time. You should be focusing on mains answer writing. You should be focusing yourself in equipping yourself in the best possible manner to give the best possible answers in mains. I'm not very much focused. I'm not a person who's very focused on prelims, because once you do your mains preparation properly, prelims is automatic. It will automatically, you'll end up clearing prelims. So focus on your mains preparation if you still have 1 more year time. Okay. But some subjects like environment is not done, sir. Portions and governance too. Well, you should ask the academy. I have no idea about it. I'm just giving my idea. I'm not even sure whether they're planning to complete it for your batch within this month or not. I'm just expecting probably by this end of this month they might complete. So you can talk to them. See, if it is not completed, they will definitely provide you classes, or at least they will give you the videos of the classes if there's a crippling shortage of time. Okay, so you can contact with the academy regarding that. What is the point regarding alcohol on GST? Please repeat. Okay. What I said on alcohol, what was the point on alcohol? There are certain products which are kept outside the purview of GST. You can look at the 7th schedule here. Petroleum, high-speed diesel, motor spirit, natural gas, aviation, tobacco and tobacco products. Okay. Well, these products are actually outside the purview of GST. And I think alcohol is also outside the purview of GST. I'm not very sure, but let me find it out and tell you. Okay. Some date. Oh, that point. Okay. No. That, what I said was, when you read Article 279A, it talks about different functions of GST Council. The function of GST Council is about fixing GST rates for different commodities, for deciding which commodities will be outside the purview of GST, to decide on annual turnover. If a business does a particular annual turnover, only above that you will be made to pay GST for your business. Next is, these kind of products which are outside the purview of GST, how long should they remain outside the purview of GST? Maybe for the next 2 years, 3 years, subsequently, after which they should also be brought under GST. So to decide on such time limits up to which certain products can be kept outside the ambit of GST. That is also one of the function of GST Council. That was what I was actually referring to. That is all some of the functions given under Article 279A. Okay. All right. Okay. So we'll meet tomorrow. Thank you.